Welcome to my podcast. Hello, it's me. Um, Welcome to the Art of Feeling Better. My name, if you didn't already know, is Jane Bellis, otherwise known as Mrs. Mojo. And I created this podcast. Well, it kind of does what it says on the tin, really. The Art of Feeling Better. How can we just feel a little bit better? And I've had some amazing guests over the last couple of years, and I have brought you my own musings, which today is another of those around topics that deeply affect us all as human beings. And at the moment, I am focusing on women's health, women's mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, and all things burnout. And I've had some questions that people have asked me. So I thought I'd jump on and do a little podcast episode to answer the questions. There's been quite a few, but there's two in particular that I wanted to just bring together in one conversation because they're very, very relevant when we discuss them together, even though they were two separate questions, two very separate topics of conversation. Or are they? The first one is how to cure burnout fast. How do you get rid of burnout really quickly? And the other one was how to recover from severe burnout. How do you find yourself again after you've hit the deck and you have completely lost your identity? You don't know which way is up. You don't know who you are anymore. Your physical health's taken a beating. Your mental health's taken a beating. How do you recover from that, right? And I wanted to bring to you my unique viewpoint, both from lived experience and from my professional capacity. So you've got a 2-for-1, a buy one, get one free on that today. And I'm really, really looking forward to this particular episode and this particular, I want to say discussion, but it's just me talking at you. So feel free to drop something in the comments, reach out, let me know. So it can be a two-way discussion, right? I have some guests lined up to support this particular topic. So stay tuned for that. Make sure if you haven't already subscribe, like, follow. I sound like a real wannabe influencer there, don't I? But it's relevant. Do all the things, and then you won't miss any of the updates, especially if this does apply to you. If you're a woman and you are chronically anxious, stressed, struggling, not understanding what's going on for you, having a ton of different symptoms that maybe you managed before, but you really can't manage anymore. And you are really wondering, who the hell am I? This is for you. Save this and give me a follow. So, how to recover from burnout fast and how to recover from severe burnout. I have to take these at exactly the same time because back in 2010, I was the person asking the question, how do I recover from burnout fast? What's the fastest way for me to get back on the horse? How can I really quickly, so that nobody notices, give me a magic pill. I need a magic bullet formula. I'll do whatever it takes to get back to my life very, very quickly because I have people who depend on me, right? I've got children, 4 children I have, and they were younger at the time. A job, a career, I had my own business, I had staff that depended on me, I had a husband, still have a husband, the same husband. And I had a million and one different pressures and different thoughts racing through my mind that it was essential because the world would come to an end if I didn't stop feeling what I was feeling immediately and get back to what I was doing. So much so that the first time I was put in hospital, just on my arse in hospital, blue lighted, in an ambulance, that's the exact thing I said to the doctor. Give me something. Give me something quickly. I'm really too busy for this. You don't understand what my life is like. I really need to get back out of here and I need to get back to what I was doing because so many people depend on me doing that. Okay, let's park that for a minute. How do I recover from burnout fast? Let's just move on to the next question for a moment. Recovering from severe burnout. So, you've had that hospital trip. If you're like me, you manage to hustle because, with the greatest respect, the medical staff don't understand burnout, mental health, emotional health. or really women's health, unless they're very, very specialist in that area, and in particular functional and lifestyle medicine rather than just field medicine, kind of DSM. What's your symptom? Here's a pill. That kind of medicine is not great for what I was experiencing and what you might be experiencing. Not a doctor. That's not to say you shouldn't. Of course, you need to get your medical experts in, and you need to look for support and help wherever you can. However, I would say broaden that search. Broaden that search, look in many different areas, test out what works for you, try lots of different options, and most importantly, listen to your own body's intelligence, which is exactly what I'm going to talk about next. Listen to what your body's telling you about your symptoms and about your treatment. Okay? So if you've hit the deck completely and you've had some kind of physical, mental, emotional, existential, relationship, work crisis, and you are starting from scratch, everything's been on fire. Perhaps you've been in bed. Perhaps you've literally been on bed rest because you've been so sick you've not been able to do anything. I've worked with a couple of women who've had this, who've been bedridden for months. Perhaps you've just exploded in a crazy firework of rage, flame, and stardust, and quit your job and ended a relationship and turned from one gentle, quiet, passive woman into a feral, raging hormone. I don't even know what the word is. Whirlwind, volcano, some kind of natural disaster, goddess. And you have cleared the decks. You can't do it anymore. And everyone thinks you've gone crazy. Everyone thinks you've lost the plot. A few years ago, hysteria. Let's remove her womb. Let's section her. Let's lobotomize her. Let's deeply medicate her because she's not performing like a good lady should. Maybe that's been you. Or any other number of things might have happened to you. Perhaps you've had what you consider to be a mental breakdown. Maybe you have just become completely embedded in freeze mode and you're unable to do anything that you've done before. Your brain won't work, your emotions won't work. Maybe you're numb, maybe you just stopped. Complete inertia. That's it. Had enough, can't do it. However that looks for you, if this deep, severe burnout has hit you, it's probably because you've been ignoring the signs for a long time and your body's been whispering at you and whispering at you and maybe talking a bit louder. And maybe your answer was, how do I get rid of burnout fast? How do I mask this over? Find a magic cure or a magic pill so that I can carry on with what I was doing because so many people depend on me. I need to just pretend this isn't happening. I need to find something that will stop these symptoms from slowing me down, stop these symptoms from causing trouble in my life that revolves around service and being a general chef, cleaner, taxi driver, tutor, therapist, maid, emotional punching bag, because that's all my roles and I must fulfill them dutifully. And maybe one day somebody will just see me and tell me to sit down and make me a cup of tea and just tell me it's okay, I can stop now, that I'm enough and I deserve a rest and I don't have to perform or prove myself anymore. And you've been waiting for that moment. And in the meantime, it's really important to just get rid of burnout fast so nobody will notice. So these two things are very much interconnected. And I have experienced both of those things because they are the same thing. They are the same thing. And anytime anybody asks me about this particular topic, and it's really interesting to me at the moment because I've really drilled down and focused in on the word burnout and the topic of burnout. But for me, there's an assumption, isn't there, that it's high-performing people, especially if it's women that we're talking about in burnout, because it used to be a very masculine kind of thing, 80s businessmen in suits experiencing burnout because they were just working too hard for too long in a corporate space, in a work sense. So when we think about women in burnout, we can automatically sort of tune into that, don't we? And we think it must be overachieving, high power women in corporate high level positions that again experience burnout because they've done too much pressure for too long. And really what I'm talking about is life in general being set up to be unsustainable and unmanageable, and the pressure put on particularly women, that's my topic at the moment, to ignore that fact, and the badge of honor for being stoic and being quiet and smiling through the pain and being able to endure more than is humanly possible for as long as possible. That's where we're at. And then when we crack and we break and we're unable to endure that anymore, the other labels get put on: hysterical, weak, failure, all of those awful things that would have happened to women years ago. We're fortunate that we're not quite in that space anymore, but it's still there. It's still there. We still have that to kind of contend with and deal with. And there are, there's many reasons why we try to hide from it, and we try to succeed and not admit failure, and we feel like it's failure and weakness. We shouldn't feel like that, right? We shouldn't. I was reading an article a little while ago about childbirth. And I've been through childbirth 4 times, and I kind of tell you that this is a pretty accurate description. And there was lots of science behind it. And it was a man, interestingly, and I'm really, really grateful for all you divine masculine fellas out there at the moment who are comfortable and emotionally intelligent enough to recognize their role to hold space and to protect the space for women, and divine feminine to rise back up, and for women to really be seen as they truly are, and to be able to do the work that we're here to do in balance with our masculine counterparts. So some guys are really doing some great work around that at the moment. And this guy was talking about childbirth and the science behind childbirth, that actually we shouldn't be able to stay conscious through the level of pain that we endure when giving birth. The human tolerance level for such pain, it just goes way beyond that. And yet somehow we remain conscious and we endure it because we have to, we instinctively know that we have to get our baby out safely, and we have to be present, and we have to experience that. How badass is that? Is that not goddess? Is that not portal for souls to enter? What act of creation is that? And yet we still seem to be in a place where we are quite often the second-class citizen. And that sounds, I don't like saying that, because that's not how I necessarily feel in my unit with my people around me. But in general, when we look at things like the gender pay gap, and we look at the unequal distribution of acts of service and of just what we do to survive and what we do in our days, it is still very uneven and unequal. And a lot of guys will really roll their eyes at that. And I get it. I totally understand. It's the way we've been conditioned, because a lot of men have incredible pressure and are doing incredible things, and are probably looking at some of the women thinking, well, God, try my shoes on for a day and do what I do for a day, because it's so physically demanding, or different kinds of pressures. But I think without discounting that, we really need to have this conversation about this particular experience with women, and not getting into the debate about cis and trans women and the differences, the similarities, the whole discussion around that, because it's difficult to have this conversation without feeling like you're being inflammatory or disrespectful or not inclusive. But I think this conversation is super important for cis women, for women who have specific hormonal experiences and things like childbirth and the generational and genetic things that are passed down through our ancestors right to now, to how we think, feel and behave as women in society, and how that manifests itself as chronic burnout that we patch over and we assume that we're not allowed to experience because we shouldn't be experiencing it, because it's not our place to experience it. These kind of things are left for the men in roles of high positions and high power, who are doing jobs that are really difficult. And of course they're going to burn out at some point, and of course you've done incredibly well, and yeah, you need to rest now, you've done too much for far too long. It's a very different thought process and a very different viewpoint culturally, especially here in the West, that's perfectly acceptable. And yet when a woman reaches breaking point after, and we're going to look at this in a second, after all of the things that she's experiencing and tolerating and just absorbing, which is way beyond what we should be able to do. It's not just about doing a job or a role. It's about doing multiple roles, multiple jobs, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until you finally reach breaking point. And we're not taught, and this is the point that I really want to make, is that some of these things, they're a necessity in the modern world. They shouldn't be, and I think they're making steps to move out of that a little bit. But we are where we are. There's things that need doing, there's roles that need fulfilling, and until we are looking at the education system and we're teaching people, men and women, boys and girls, we're teaching human beings how to be human beings and how to cooperate, to collaborate, to share workload. Emotional intelligence has to be built in from the early age, empathy, compassion, the ability to, see actually what's going on around you and not just be reactive to your situation, and be able to communicate effectively. And, it's that village analogy. It does take a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to survive in a hostile world, which I think is where we are at the moment. So I think it's really important. And please excuse me if my terminology in this particular episode around gender is triggering, but I think it's important for this particular conversation. I've had loads of different conversations over the years with lots of different people about lots of different topics. And I love human beings being human beings. So for me, the labels aren't particularly important. I recognize for a lot of people the labels are very important, and I totally respect that around identity. But for me, if you're nice and if you're kind to me, then that's all that matters. But I think at the moment in this particular topic, I have to make that particular gender distinction, and I'm talking about cis women in particular. So what do we do about it? What do we do about it is the question. How do we recover? So I want to flip the topic of how do I recover quickly and really make you think about that, because that isn't the reason. Think about the reasons behind why you want to recover quickly. Is it so you can get back to exactly the same environment you were before and keep performing, because that's what sent you into this situation in the first place? So we need to look at the roots, and we need to look at the environment, the soil that you are, preparing and cultivating and growing your trees and your blossoms and your plants and your veggies in. If this was a garden, you would be looking at that environment to see why things were wilting and dying and failing and not thriving. So I want you to kind of use that analogy here. There's no quick fix. There's a complete transformation available to you. Complete transformation from the person you are now, if you're experiencing that, to the person that's waiting for you to become. And I can tell you that because I've been there and I'm in a different place now. And the road to recovery was not quick. It was a series of emotional, physical, and mental layers that needed care and attention and focus to be able to unpick and understand and accept and get clarity on and release, in order for my body and my nervous system to feel safe enough to take a breath, to feel comfortable in my own body, to allow permission for rest, to put in better boundaries, and to have conversations that, years ago would have made me terrified that I was going to be abandoned, or that I was going to be seen as weak or failing, or, all my attachments were going to collapse if I didn't keep being everything to everybody all the time. It was a wound, right? It was a childhood wound that just needed some attention. Little Jane had just been waiting there for ages, just waiting for me to see her and do the work and understand what was going on. So, and that is very, very simple and very, very terrifying. So shadow work is the way. Looking at the bits that you kept hidden and repressed. And the way you do that is by taking a look at those symptoms and those thought processes. If you're thinking, I haven't got time for this, then there's a thought there that needs to be unpicked. What is more important? Is there a time in the future that's more important than the present moment right now, and your health and your vitality and your life? When is that moment going to come, and why do you believe it's somewhere in the future? Yeah. So if you are in that place, I really want you to kind of think a little bit more about how that plays out. How does this kind of story end for you right now? Is there going to be some magic trick that actually it never gets any worse and you start to feel better all of a sudden under these kind of conditions and this kind of pressure? Because for me, it wasn't. It was inevitable. And I wish I had looked at this a bit sooner so that I could have had more of my life in the space I am now and less in the crazy burnout phases. But I had some learning to do. So, I'm grateful for that experience. And if you are in that severe chronic, I've hit the deck space, then there is hope because you are going to be rebuilding. But what I would like to say to you is please do not go back into the environment that made you sick. Part of your recovery and part of your rebuilding and reclamation of your true identity and who you really are is around understanding why you got here in the first place and rebuilding from the root with clearer, better boundaries, understanding what lights you up, what you love, what makes you really uncomfortable, what you actually shouldn't be doing, where you've handed away your power, what your relationships look like, what your career and your job look like. I'd created a monster for myself. I had to unpick every area of my life, and there was things that had to change. So maybe that's you, and it's not as scary as it sounds. On the other side of it is just, it's incredible. So, please take some comfort from that fact that, it is going to be okay. And my work in particular and how I approach this topic, there's a few things that I can do to help and support, and I'm really happy to. I'd love to be part of your journey with you if it resonates. The first and the easiest step is my burnout recovery guide. I put together a guide. It's an ebook, instant download. It's packed without being overwhelming because there's so much information that I could have put into it. I really selected the core bits that you really need from where you are right now, this second, to be able to get to the other side. And there'll be a longer process in getting things back on track fully. And there's more support I can give you, but this is your starting point to really shift out of this space. And there's no pressure. You don't have to show up for anything. It's got 60% off at the moment. So it's only $9.99 in the UK. It's under tenner. It's like the best tenner you'll ever spend. And you got it for life. And at the moment, I think there's still a couple of bonus guided meditations, audios, and some videos in there to help support you. So it's like massive high value. But I just wanted to give as many people this information as I possibly can. So that's one way. Then I've got a deeper dive course on my Mojo School. On my dashboard, you get your own little dashboard. And there is a deeper dive course. It's 5 modules and it's just a bit more interactive, goes a little bit deeper. There's a course player. So if you struggle to read and finish something, if you've got loads of books on your shelf and loads of ebooks you've never even opened and you don't think that's for you, then this might help because you have some interactive elements where there's some journaling prompts and you can click and you can watch little short videos and it takes you to the end and it will show you on the course player how much of the course you're completing. So in terms of accountability, and in terms of the little dopamine hits for achievement, it gives you that little bit of fire to be able to get through and complete. And there's little quizzes on there. There's downloadable things that you can print off or keep as screensavers to help you around each different topic that you need to cover. There's little mini ebooks that are much shorter. They're just quick, easy reads, but really useful, and you can save them as well. And then you get to the end, there's a certificate. So a nice big dopamine hit achievement. And you'll always have your dashboard whenever you want to log back in, revisit anything. Really, really helpful stuff that will start the process for you and get you a little bit deeper. And you'll be able to access easily my podcast, my blog series. There's lots and lots of blog posts on specific elements of burnout and women's health and recovery. So yeah, that's a really good one. Highly recommend it. I think at the moment, again, I think that's about 50% off at the moment. It's £47. So it's really super easy, super affordable. So jump on it. The another element that you could look at is I have a program. So I've got a subscription-based program so that you can join other women in a similar space, and we hop on a call once a month and we look and do a real deep dive. And it just shows you're not on your own, even though you feel like you might be. You can come with your mic off, your camera off. You don't need to engage. You can if you want to, but there's no pressure space. Turn up in your jammies if you want. but it's live interaction with me. So that makes you feel like you've got that sort of support, and which you have. You'll also have a full curriculum that I will each month teach you how to work through as some self-paced stuff. So there's a whole accountability plan. You'll have your whole wellness portfolio that builds in the meantime, and your burnout recovery pathway. Loads of cool stuff there. That's £47 a month. So you can jump on that. Again, super affordable, life-changing stuff. If that's for you, then I'll make sure I link it in the description. And finally, I have a few one-to-one spaces left. I don't do very many of these. I swore I was never going to go back to it, but it feels like it's the right thing to do. So I have some one-to-one, really super deep dive transformational spaces with me. You can book one-off if you want to. There's a coaching platform that I use. We can meet online, and if you want some clarity or just some support for a specific topic and you need to have a chat, you can book a one-off call, or I have a 12-month program, which there are a few places left for. I think I've got 4 spaces left. Inner alchemy and integration mapping, where we go from start to finish where you are now, and we process and we heal and we move in this beautiful sacred nervous system spiral so that you really can come home to yourself and feel safe in your own body again. So that's available. I will make sure I link that for you as well. But before I leave you, I wanted to just run through to give you some top tips if you're struggling right now, how you can make things a little bit better, how you can kind of understand what's going on for you. And the first thing you need to do is just that. You need to actually understand exactly what is happening. And then once you have that understanding in place, they say knowledge is power, right? And knowledge is power, but knowledge on its own without any kind of action is useless, doesn't do anything for you. So there's a couple of things in the ebook. So the $9.99 ebook details all this down. So if you're not sure where to start, I'd 100% suggest going there and grabbing that. Everything else is still open to you if you decide that you want to work with me. But there's things like the difference between stress and burnout, because stress is a good thing. I teach this in a lot of my classes. Stress is a good thing. It keeps you motivated. It keeps you in that peak performance. Is great when you're achieving and you're moving forward and you're evolving and you're actually doing things. You can't just sit in inertia in your bedroom forever, because that's not good for you. So stress is a natural physical human response to certain things that happen in life, and you need it. You need things like adrenaline and cortisol and that switch to be flicked. It's survival, right? In our prehistoric past, we needed to flick that switch into fight or flight, otherwise known as the sympathetic nervous system response. And we needed to be able to take action quickly, and a whole host of things needed to happen in your body to allow you to be able to either run or fight and survive. So it's crucial. We don't want to lose that. A stress response is vital. The problem is when your stress response is flicked to that on switch 24/7, which unfortunately particularly in the West, in our culture, with media, with this addiction to doom scrolling to get those dopamine hits and recalibrate your brain chemistry, with things like gaming and shopping to excess and fast food and poor nutrition and convenience and bright lights, artificial lights, artificial flavors, chemicals everywhere, environmental stresses, the schooling experience that isn't great for a lot of people, work experience, humans being dicks to each other, and bullying and hate crime, and the news and propaganda, and all of these things constantly assaulting your senses. If you don't have any mechanisms to counteract that or recover from that, if you have no somatic practices, you don't understand how to ground yourself, you don't understand how to expel energy that isn't yours and release stuff out of your body, you're not emotionally intelligent, you've never been taught. How could you be? You don't understand how to process emotions in real time. You keep them all locked away and stored. You don't have any understanding about what you're putting in your body, the things that you're imbalanced with, the things that you really need to supplement or support, because you are a unique expression, right? One size does not fit all. You need to understand your own self. If you've never learned to listen to your body and you've always handed your power away to other people, parents, doctors, teachers, and for them to tell you what you're feeling or what you're experiencing, and you don't have any of your own natural bodily intelligence, all of those things are going to hit you like a ton of bricks, and you're not going to understand how to, you feel very hopeless. There's nothing, I have no control. I can't do anything about any of that. Well, you can't do anything about what's going on in the world and what other people are doing. No, that's right. It's a tool that we use quite a lot in psychotherapy, is understanding what is not in your control and what is in your control. So when you have that understanding, then you can start to look at the parts that actually you have full control over. You just need to take the pen back. Somebody else has been writing your story for you. You need to take authorship back and start to write the new ending of your story the way you want it to look. And that's exactly my role. That's what I help you do. So the difference between stress and burnout, the first thing is understanding that, right? So stress, too much on your plate. Maybe it's a temporary situation, big workload, young kids, something going on, and there's too much on your plate. That's stress, and that's natural. It happens in life. We can't emit stress from life. We can't remove stress. A lot of people just won't function because they don't ever want to feel anything. That's not realistic, and that's not a beautiful experience of life. It's learning how to manage stress effectively and learning how to get back into rest and digest as quickly as possible after an event has passed. Okay. So with burnout, it's not just you've got too much on your plate. The plate has been completely full or completely empty for far too long. There's been no difference. Stress, you care too much about things. Everything just feels like it's a bit overwhelming, and your thoughts are kind of in that space where you care too much. At burnout, maybe you've stopped caring altogether, that complete apathy. You just can't do it anymore. You're done. You might still feel things like really intense feelings when you're in a stress mode. Everything's really tense and hypervigilant, and you're feeling everything. There are things that you can do to mitigate that. You can learn before this reaches massive burnout. You're still in the stress zone there, and you can put some things into place to calm that down. If you're in full burnout, you might just feel numb, detached, flat, done. If you're in a stressful situation and you are stressed about a temporary situation, rest will help, right? You need to take a break, you need to take some rest, you feel a bit more renewed, but then you go back into that situation. If that situation is ongoing and there is no end in sight, then this is careening towards burnout. And when you hit burnout, rest doesn't touch it. You can get 10 hours sleep and still wake up feeling exhausted. So there's a difference there for you to look at. When you're stressed, you can still imagine feeling better, and you think, just when I get to the end of this, you know what it feels like to feel better, and you understand that this is temporary, and you can kind of recall and imagine when you're going to feel better. I would say there's a word of caution there, because you need to actually experience feeling better, not just saying, yeah, one day, when this next task is done, and then as soon as that task is done, you immediately take on another one. That is sending you into burnout, and that's a behavior pattern. So just watch that one. But if you are in the middle of working towards a job interview or a presentation or an exam, or there is just something coming up, you know that this feeling in your body and these thoughts and all this stuff is a temporary thing. And on the other side of it, you're having a big holiday and you're getting back to a slower paced life. You're just stressed at the moment, and that's okay. But if you can't remember what better even feels like, it's been so long in this space, there is no better, there is no hope, then, this is like really severe burnout. And you will probably notice a pattern there, that these things sound very much like depression, right? So if you go and you're explaining these things to a GP, or you're looking at going to a professional, which you must do, right? So I'm not saying that you shouldn't, and I'm not saying that I'm going to replace any of that, but you need to have the awareness and be able to manage yourself and understand yourself as well. And if you get diagnosed with depression and you get put on antidepressants, which many people are on antidepressants, maybe that's not what you needed, because maybe it's the lifestyle, maybe it's all of the things that go on underneath, the environment, all of your stresses, prolonged stress, the fact that you have never been supported through any kind of your wounding or childhood or traumas, or big T traumas or little T traumas. Maybe your boundaries are awful. You're stuck in people pleaser drives. You're stuck in perfectionism because of something that happened when you were 6. And no one's ever taught you this, and no one's ever gone in and had a look, and you've never been able to be supported through that process. So you get a diagnosis, you get a label slapped on you, and you get meds, maybe forever. So perhaps you aren't depressed. Perhaps you're not a depressed person naturally. Perhaps you are. Perhaps there's some kind of chemical imbalance and you have depression. But I just want you to think a little bit, and I want you to have a little look and read a bit deeper as to whether this could be a symptom of burnout. All of these things you're feeling, you've been doing far too much for far too long. Certainly what it was for me. They tried to prescribe me lots of different things. And now I look back, I recognize that it was an inevitable careening off a cliff, landing in that space. And when I went with the symptom, none of that was even discussed. Otherwise, it would have been obvious, right? That this is just a symptom, and it was something that needed to just be worked through. So just have a look at what's going on in your body. Have a look and sort of look between those two spaces and think, is it stress or could it be burnout? Could it be something a little bit deeper? And going back to my previous conversation, burnout hits women differently. We know it hits women differently. We are disproportionately more likely to be primary caregivers, emotionally responsible for absolutely everybody and all of the relationships around you, um, conditioned to suppress our own needs without complaint, like I've already mentioned. And this invisible load accumulates, right? There's a lot more going on than people see on the surface or people realize. So it's important to accept that and give yourself the compassion and the understanding that that's true, that's a thing, and we need to have that taken into consideration. So there's so much under the surface, there's so much quiet responsibility and roles that we just automatically accept and take on for ourselves that maybe we shouldn't. And I go in my ebook as well to talk about the burnout archetypes, and there's a quiz on my website as well if you're interested, so you can find out just by hitting some buttons. The burnout archetypes, the types that we don't talk about, and actually understanding it isn't just one thing either. You might have a different kind of burnout, so it's very, very nuanced. Different for men and women, and for women, different kinds of burnout. So you might have caregiver burnout, and that could be just that emotional and physical depletion of taking care of other people. It could be children, elderly parents, relatives, a partner with health challenges. It's a severe form of burnout because you have to keep going for that other person and you override all of your natural needs. And it's just not acknowledged at all. Absolutely. Makes it really lonely because you don't understand what's going on for you and you don't see a way out because your children, your parent, your partner need you. You cannot let them down. Very, very tough one, but that's possible to work through that and to get yourself a support system of tools and things around you that will help you. Relational burnout. I get experience a lot of this stuff myself, probably a mixture of all of these archetypes at one point. And this is the exhaustion, relational burnout, the exhaustion that builds from being the emotional anchor for everyone around you year after year, forever, without anybody ever holding that space for you. So you're the steady one, you're the strong one, you're the one that people go to at 2:00 in the morning when they've had a meltdown. And eventually, my friends, the bill for that becomes due and you have to pay. And it usually, for me, with burnout. And then you become really inconvenient. Someone's like, well, why is she not? This is really inconvenient because I need that person who's always there for me. And that compounds the problem magnificently. So a lot of people around you are going to have to learn as well, which is another layer for you to look at. Identity burnout is another one. This is probably the most sort of quietly devastating of all the burnouts. So if you've been all these things for people for so long and you've had all these labels that either you've taken on for yourself or you feel like other people have put on you or society or, genetics, you have actually just lost touch with who you are outside your roles. And I can really, really relate to this one. I experienced, this quite severely. You just don't know who you are because, the roles and the labels make up your identity and they are things that are external to you and what everybody else knows of you and expects of you. And you just have no idea who you are underneath all of that. You've maybe never had a chance to explore that. You just got buried under everybody else. So it's a bit of an excavation of trying to work out gently and tease out the parts of you that need to be seen and reclaimed, right? Spiritual burnout. And I really want to talk about this in a separate episode. So I'm going to do that. And this is all around losing sense of meaning, right? It's nothing to do with religion. Talk about this a lot, the difference between spirituality and the overlaps between spirituality and religion. It can have something to do with your faith, but we're talking about losing sense of meaning, purpose, connection to something bigger than yourself, connection, just nothing worth showing up for. It's not quite depression. It's like just being hollowed out completely. The things that light you up no longer light you up. The compass has gone quiet. You don't know which direction you're in. You just, there's nothing there. So it's important for you to understand the distinction between those. What is your main burnout archetype? Are you a mixture of all of these things, which is like, quadruple whammy all at once? Or is it one dominant type, because then you can really drill down on that, right? And you can start to look at what that means for you, and most importantly, how to build the blocks in and the steps to recover. Um, and there's a good burnout self-assessment in the ebook as well, if you want to look at that. There is in the course as well, separate ones as you go along, but you can have a look at your physical symptoms, your emotional symptoms, your cognitive stuff, the brain fog, your behavioral symptoms, your relational symptoms, how you're showing up and how you're communicating, and it will kind of give you a little bit of a roadmap from there. So it's really, really interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting once you start working out what kind of burnout you're experiencing, then you can have a look at how that shows up. Um, and that was one of the most interesting things for me. So you might show up in lots of different ways through your burnout, and you will recognize yourself immediately in one of these. So high functioning burnout is probably one of the most insidious. That was it for me. It just keeps showing up, really capable, super organized, keep carrying more than anybody else realizes. Nobody knows what you're experiencing and how this superhuman load is still there. And that strength has become the very thing that's hiding the problem. So you have been far too strong for far too long, and you can't let the mask slip. So you just keep adding more and more things on with never letting anything go. So on the outside, there's this capable, absolutely super strong, the one that everybody goes to. But then on the inside, overthinking, emotional pressure, complete exhaustion that rest is not touching, because you're not supposed to be absorbing all this or taking all this on as a human being. It's not sustainable. So you've been in survival mode for so long that it's become your baseline. You don't know anything different. And that was definitely it for me. You adapt so well that you or the people around you have no idea what's going on. So what happens is eventually you just hit the deck. Your body, if you're not listening and looking for this, and you're not realizing this actually isn't normal or okay, there's something going on here, and you don't listen to your body starting to whisper and then shout and then scream at you, you'll end up like me, hospitalized. Then you have people pleasing burnout, which again, there's elements of that were the same for me. So if you're the person that people rely on, you're always saying yes. No isn't even in your vocabulary. Everybody else's needs are far more important, and you will notice everybody else's needs before they even ask, and you just jump to action and you sideline your own needs and put yourself to the back of the list. Is this you? So from the outside, it's caring, it's generous. That's how when I was kind of in that space, how I justified it. I'm just a nice person. Don't make me be a horrible person. I like being a nice person. Everybody else should be more like me, kind and generous and look after everybody else. So the emotional cost of that, the exhaustion, the guilt, the pressure to keep it up and keep giving when you have nothing left in your tank, because that's what you've set up. You've created the monster. You've been carrying everybody else's emotional load when it was never yours to carry. Just because you can carry it doesn't mean you should. And that weight is massive. So it's because you have been conditioned, or something has happened that's made you feel like you need to suppress your needs and look after other people to keep your attachments in order, to keep yourself safe. It became a baseline when you were younger, and then that's just how you behave now. Safety seeking behavior is by keeping everything calm and quiet and looking after everybody else so that you're all safe. But it's not safe long term, because it burns you out, right? So your recovery your recovery is around radical act of receiving, right? You have to let yourself receive. You have to understand that your needs are not a burden. They are a human right for you, but it feels horrible in your body when you finally start kind of understanding that. So incidentally, the high functioning burnout, your recovery starts with understanding the pattern behind the performance, why you do this in the first place. And you need to calm the overload and look at somatic stuff before you start rebuilding from a bit of steadier ground. And you have to learn to let a few of those plates go and hand over some of those things. But you can do it. So people pleaser, you need to be able to radically receive, sit down, let somebody else do something for you. It's hard. Your body will say you're in danger, but you have to, little tiny steps that build it in over time as a new habit. And you won't, it'll feel great after a while. Then they shut down burnout. You might not feel just tired. You might feel completely emotionally flat, foggy, numb, unable to actually do anything and push through the way that you could before. Motivation's gone. Things that you used to manage with before now feel enormous. And let's not forget, we need to take into account the hormones that some of us are experiencing right now, which adds to this load. If you are a woman of a certain age like myself, and perimenopause, puberty's feral older sister that nobody tells you about has suddenly come across your radar, this will compound this, and you will not be able to manage necessarily the things that you found super, super easy. And then you'll beat yourself up about it, and then you'll get all confused and emotionally overwhelmed. You might be presenting as more withdrawn, more disconnected, and you don't know really why. It's not laziness, it's not lack of willpower, it's not lack of resilience. It's what happens when your nervous system has been under that much pressure for so long that it just shifts into protection mode and kind of goes into freeze on you. It's just slowing you down to keep you safe. It's not failing you, it's trying in the only way it can to save you from any more damage and from going even further into burnout. So your recovery has to begin not with force. You cannot force anything or push through, no matter what anybody tells you. You have to start rebuilding safety. So very gentle, structured steps that are going to help your nervous system trust that you're not in survival mode any longer. You don't have to carry everything on your own. Then looking at identity disconnection burnout, somewhere along the way, through all the pushing through, the performing, the masks, the years of being everything to everyone, you might have stopped feeling fully connected to yourself because you don't really know who you are. You're just performative. It's more than just being tired. It's like this quiet sense of just flicking to autopilot, getting on with what needs to be done and losing your own spark completely. So you lose like this passion and this joy for life, and it's just going through the motions, just doing what needs to be done. Life probably feels flatter, heavier, less meaning, less passion, less direction. Things that once lit you up feel really distant. You might not even remember what that feels like anymore. Rest probably won't bring you fully back to yourself. Everybody else might recognize you, but like a slightly different, muted version. And they might think, oh, she's not herself very much. Something really deep is missing. And it's emotional exhaustion when it's gone on for long enough to disconnect you from your own identity. Your own needs been sidelined, your own sense of direction never mattered or stopped mattering. So you kind of just gotten into that space, and now you need to try and find your way out of it. So your recovery begins not with pressure to perform or to take on another thing. And I've just done a video on this, like, no more, you don't need another 5 a.m. alarm program or boot camp or specific routine, or it's too much. There's too much going on there, and it adds to the overwhelm, and it's kind of counterproductive. And I do a piece on that actually in the ebook around when self-help becomes another problem and another layer. So you have to watch for that. Gentle reconnection, if this is you, just finding your way back really slowly to the woman beneath all the roles. And then you have to start building a life that actually fits her, managing all the jigsaw pieces, but very, very gentle, slow steps in that space. So, and you have to take into consideration that this affects your partnership with your significant other, your kids. So you have to kind of have the steps to be able to manage not feeling like a burden and other people understanding what's going on for you. If you're a parent and trying to co-regulate, there's lots and lots of interesting stuff there. So I've got some practical scripts for you in the ebook that might help with that, as well as an invisible load audit. That's an interesting one where you actually start to tick the boxes of the mental load, the emotional labor, the caregiver load, the professional load at work, the body load, the social load, and you tick the boxes. You're like, oh my goodness, the invisible load on me is crazy. What can I actually put down or shift or change a little bit? And tiny steps add up. There's nothing drastic. The key to burnout recovery, it has to be slow, steady steps that reinforce over time safety in your body. No quick fix, because your body will automatically flip back again because it won't believe that you're going to do it. It won't believe that you're safe. And as soon as you behave in that old way again, it goes, yeah, told you. So you have to be really consistent and really slow and steady. And then your nervous system actually does recalibrate. Right? So lots of shadow work and values clarification, working out what matters to you. Because how can you put boundaries in place? And I teach this so much. How can you put boundaries in place, especially if you're a massive people pleaser, when you don't know what matters to you? Because then you're looking, what you tell me what should I do? What matters? You have to understand what really matters to you, what's important, what your core values are, what lights you up, what brings you peace, what brings you joy, what makes you happy, what you like doing. Once you've got clear on that, it becomes very easy because it's very obvious what doesn't align or who doesn't align. And I got to the point where I'm like, what? No, which was never in my vocabulary as a raging people pleaser, became a real buzzword for me. because my values were so strong and my understanding of myself was so much better that when things would cross my radar that previously I would say yes before anybody even asked me anything. I just assumed that that was my role and that's what I should be doing. Those things would come back at me and I'd be like, why would I do that? Absolutely not. That's just going to make me sick or ill, or I'm not going to enjoy it, or it's not for me, and there's no reason for me to do it. No. And then the people who maybe have been in your orbit for the wrong reasons, they just disappear slowly or quickly and, go and bother somebody else. So it's not a bad thing, it's not. Even if your body tells you it's dangerous for your attachments. Some attachments you don't need, okay? So it's all about that process of uncovering and understanding, and then you can start to find your way back. And the pathway does light itself up at that point. It might feel really overwhelming and really foggy and difficult right now, but once you do this work, then you have the ability to have freed up some bandwidth so that you can actually put some new things in place and to start to reinforce that. And at that point, everything becomes super, super clear. And you can just gently and slowly navigate the path forward. And that's my hope for you, is that I can help that process somehow, and I can help you really find your way back to yourself. So many ways for me to do that, right? Which I've already been through. And I'm going to link them all in the description. And I just want you to consider, after this little musing, what does it look like for you? And if you are, I know I still have lots of guys in the audience, and I have loads and loads of different kinds of people who come across my radar every now and again. And what does this mean to you? What does this mean to you? And how does this relate to your experiences? Are you around somebody who's experiencing this? Have you got a bit of clarity for what they may be experiencing? Have my words completely triggered and inflamed you completely, and you don't like this conversation at all? That's all right. That's okay. I'd be interested in your comments, and I'd be interested to take the discussion further, because at the moment I'm all about kind of authenticity in my own life, and it's part of my recovery, right? Was to stop the performative stuff and stop the mask wearing. So for me, I'm really diving deep into my own experiences, which are true and valid. And I've accepted a lot of these things, and I'm happy to share them now. And they may not sit or hit the way they're intended, and you may not be able to relate, or you might not agree, and those things are actually okay. I don't have to kind of be right. I just have to be authentic in my experiences and in my sharing. So at the moment, I think that's the message, is for everybody to do the same and understand that it's okay if people don't get you, or don't understand, or don't agree. That's okay. That's not your job to prove anything or to convince people. It's your job to stand in your space, to be in your body, and to recognize and accept you, all your experiences, all your feelings, the things that light you up. That's the road to recovery. So coming full circle and bringing it back to the original question, quickest way to fix burnout: go slow. There's no quick fix. There's a starting point right now today. And if you take that step today, you will recover from burnout. And I can't tell you the difference that you will feel and the person that you will become. And you can start that journey right now. And you'll be where I am now, looking back, like, God, remember that? Wow. From a different space altogether. But there's no magic bullet, and there's no do this quickly and you'll be back in work doing this tomorrow. And recovering from severe burnout, go slow. Take the steps. Give yourself permission to actually lean into that rest. It's being forced upon you, so do something with it. Teach your body new things. Learn about what's going on for you. And please make sure you don't just try and head back at breakneck speed into the environment that put you there in the first place. Take the steps. Take the learning that your body has gifted you with right now. And dig a bit deeper. Shine a light on some of the shadows and understand what it is that you've been experiencing, what's caused it, and what you need to do to never go back there ever again. And I hope my work can support with that. I'd be really delighted to be with you on that journey, however that looks for you. And my life's work is definitely becoming about that. So I'm going to do another little one around managing work, and actually, if you're not in that severe burnout space, dealing with work while you are recovering. How does that look? I'm going to bring some guests in, and I'm going to be starting a series and some more videos around some of the more practical ways. I'm going to be showing you some of my tools, my environment, some of the things that I've been building in since I started my road to recovery many years ago, which hopefully will help. So you'll see some reels and some little short videos, and maybe some longer ones as well. But for now, I just want to leave you with some lovely wishes of full and sustainable recovery and peace and actually understanding yourself a little more. And I want to leave you with a little bit of hope that things will not always be as they are now. I know it might feel like it, but you are one decision away from creating that tiny spark of change that will alter the path you're on and your entire life forever. So just keep that in mind as you go through your day. And I will see you next time on another episode of The Art of Feeling Better. Bye for now.